Even though I only spent 3 short days on my most recent bike tour attempt to ride my fixed gear the 775 miles from Sacramento to San Diego, California, I learned more and I grew more as a person in those 3 short days than I did in the previous year combined. And while the life lessons that I learned through my colossal failure of a bike tour aren't anything groundbreaking or revolutionary, they are important life lessons that I went from knowing to really understanding. Shout out to Wabi for sponsoring this fixed gear bike touring video series and for helping to make this dope content possible and for having a little bit too much faith in me that I could actually do it all in one go. To learn more about the bike that I have complete faith that will make it to San Diego, the bike that I let down but did not let me down, you can check out my setup by clicking the card above and check out Wabi Cycles linked in the description. In 2014, I moved from my hometown of Sacramento down to San Diego to go to university. And since then, it's been my dream to ride my bike from my hometown to my home away from home, San Diego. It's challenging, yet it's extremely rewarding. And finally, after 8 years of having this ride on my bucket list, I attempted it, and this ride was the biggest failure of my life. It was way harder than I thought it would be. I was much less prepared than I thought I was. I got injured, I got really sick, and the headwinds were really gnarly, and I just had to call it quits. There was just no way that I could continue this bike tour without getting even more seriously injured or more seriously sick. And I learned that you should know when to quit. Quitting doesn't mean that you suck. I should be saying I suck. Quitting doesn't mean that I suck, it just means that now is not the time to do this ride, no matter how much I want it to be. Failure isn't a bad thing, it can be a good thing, as long as you learn from it and can improve in the future. And on my next attempt, I'm definitely going to try to improve by preparing more, which brings us to our next life lesson that I learned. In his 1994 classic hit, the late great singer-songwriter Scar bestows us with the invaluable piece of knowledge: be prepared. We talk about this all the time on the channel. When you're buying a bike, bike fit is the #1 most important thing that determines whether you'll have fun riding your bike or not. And I made a bunch of changes to my bike and my setup to make it more equipped for bike touring. I added a front rack, I changed the gear ratio, I got new shoes, and this threw my setup all out of whack, and I did not test my bike fit at all. Because of that, I sprained my left Achilles tendon, which I'm still recovering from almost a month later. No, exactly a month later. I haven't ridden my bike in a month, and bike fit is to blame for that. It really is that important. Every single millimeter counts, and I wasn't prepared in that manner. I also wasn't prepared because I didn't train for this bike tour at all. I was sick for about 2 weeks prior, and then my date came up. I was like, yeah, I'm gonna just go. I'm gonna send it. I'll get better on the road. I did not get better on the road. What happened instead is that I got way sicker and even got my family sick that I was staying with. Oh, yo, my ribs hurt. I don't think that's normal. It made every single mile, and there were a lot of miles, way harder than they had to be. On a bike tour, you need to at least be at 80% capacity every day that you're riding. When I left, I was maybe about 40% capacity, and because I failed to prepare, I failed. It's like the old saying, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. Preparation, it takes time. Sometimes it takes more time than you want it to take, but it is really crucial if you want to be successful in anything that you're doing. But you can't always be prepared. Life doesn't happen on your terms. I left for this bike tour way before I was prepared because life happened to me. I got sick, and also I had a sponsor called Wabi that needed to have videos because we signed an agreement and they gave me money to make videos about this dope ass bike tour. I didn't just want to do this bike tour, I needed to do this bike tour because I was contractually obligated. Look, it was super windy the 3 days that I was riding. It was a constant, relentless 15 to 20 mile an hour headwind, and I was biking straight into the winds with like 35 pounds of gear. And yes, those headwinds were just as relentless as when I was biking up some steep Bay Area hills, again, with all this gear. There was a point on the bike tour where I legitimately thought I was going to die. I took a shorter route to my first destination, but that shorter route ended up sucking a lot more. Hey, highway riding! It's my favorite, it's so safe. Hey, state of California, that's really real funny of ya. Everyone's doing 65 here. Some things you just gotta learn through experience, and you have to be able to adapt to it. Whether you're embarking on a gnarly bike trip, or starting a business or a YouTube channel that pretends to be a business, challenges will come up that you never anticipated. And that's okay, because that's what life is. You can't prepare entirely for life. You just have to roll with the punches, have a sense of humor, and keep going forward. Just because things suck now, doesn't mean they'll suck later. And no, this isn't a review for a vacuum cleaner. It's a review for your mother. Without a doubt, attempting this fixed gear bike tour was one of the most miserable experiences of my life. I hated pretty much every moment of it that I was on the bike. The best parts of it was when I got off the bike. Oh, that's actually really hits the spot, dude. But I'm still super glad that I put myself out there and tried something that I didn't even think I could do. I found where my limit was, and I even surpassed what I thought my limit was. Because of that, it was one of the most fulfilling experiences of my life, and I am not exaggerating when I say that. In Thinking Fast and Slow, super smart psychology research professor guy Daniel Kahneman discusses the idea that there's two selves, the experiencing self and the remembering self. And he has this idea called the peak end rule, which states that we are creatures of extremes. We remember the best parts and the worst parts of our experiences and tend to forget the things that didn't really make us feel much in between. And there's also the concept of duration neglect, which claims that we don't really care how long these experiences last, how long those periods of bliss and of suffering don't really get remembered. I've learned that how we remember things is a lot more important than how we actually experience them. Kahneman argues, memories are all we get to keep from our experience of living, and the only perspective that we can adopt as we think about our lives is therefore that of the remembering self. Trying to ride my fixed gear, 775 miles, was one of the most miserable experiences of my life while I was going through it. But it was a lot of mild pain stacked on top of each other for a long period of time. So as I remember it, it's mostly a positive experience, and I'm still super proud that I did it. So I don't really remember how miserable I was biking with 35 pounds of gear, biking against relentless headwinds, almost dying, hacking up my lungs because I was riding with the worst cold of my life, and spraining my ankle. Although I know it was a miserable experience in my mind, I don't really understand how miserable it was when I try to remember it. And even if this is my biggest failure, I still see it as a success, because I still accomplished something that I never did before. I rode my bike from the house that I grew up in all the way to the frickin' ocean, and then some, all while seeing friends and family along the way. Oh. It really hit me how big of a deal it was when I rode into San Francisco and I saw the Golden Gate Bridge. I was like, whoa, I don't even want to drive here on weekends, and I rode my bike here. Even though I just went through all this suffering, I still can't wait to get back on my bike again and retry and continue pushing on to ride my fixed gear to San Diego once my ankle is all healed up, because at the end of the day, this was one of the most fulfilling experiences of my life. Normal, boring, everyday things are legit thoroughly enjoyable. Bike touring is so difficult that it forces you to live completely in the moment. When you're trying to bike 60 to 100 miles in a day, you're hungry, you're sore, you're caked in sweat, and you don't know exactly where you're going to sleep at night. When you're going through that, you don't give a damn about whether the stock market is up or down, why the rent is too damn high, whether your dog peed on the carpet again, or the fact that you're riding a bike that is clearly inferior to a Wabi. There's points where bike touring throws you completely into survival mode. If anybody finds this, here's my formal will, like I'm actually being serious. Just give my brother all my money. Love you. Give me some pets for Seymour. I would like to be buried and not cremated. I love you. That's really it. I'll see you soon. Bye. I feel like I'm leaving a message instead of a will. Where you just have absolutely no space in your mind to think about the unimportant stuff. All you're thinking is, well, geez, I hope these drivers that are passing me from 1 foot away at 65 miles an hour are looking at the road instead of their phones and don't accidentally murder me with their car. Or, dear Jesus, please give me a restaurant, a gas station, anything, because I'm short about 5,000 calories and I think I'm going to faint. In the face of all the suffering that bike touring puts you through, doubly so on a fixed gear, there's something strangely zen about going through all of that self-inflicted pain. As much as it sucks in the moment, it does pull you completely into the moment and leaves room to think about nothing else but what you're experiencing right now. It forces you to stop wishing for things that aren't and to truly appreciate things how they are. After my first day of bike touring, against a really strong headwind with way too much gear and weight on my back, much of it on the side of a highway with no shoulder, where I legitimately thought I was going to die that day, I've never been so happy to be in a basic motel. Because it had walls that kept the wind out, it had a shower, and it had a clean bed to sleep in. It was the most beautiful thing that I've seen in my life. Look, I'm a pretty adventurous guy. I've lived in 4 countries, 3 of them where you can't drink the water out of the tap. But after my attempted bike tour, it was just so intense that the thoughts of just being able to sit and play Elden Ring and cuddle Seymour, I'm perfectly happy just doing nothing for the next month or 2. Do you like this? Are you indifferent to this? And for the first time in a really long time, the thought of living in a place for more than a year doesn't scare me. It's so funny. But it actually sounds really nice. I've come back from my short bike tour, a changed man. And if you're like me and you're starting to feel like you're stuck in a rut and you find that your everyday life is mind-numbingly boring and you just want anything to change in your life, I recommend going on a bike tour because you will come back and appreciate just how nice it is to do nothing. That boring isn't so bad. Shout out to Wabi Cycles for sponsoring this bike tour. You can check out the rest of the videos in this bike tour series by clicking the card above and get subscribed because I am going to continue this bike tour and I will do my darndest to make it to San Diego on my fixed gear. And of course I'm going to document it so you can all experience it with me. Well, not completely because that would really suck. Because bike touring kind of sucks. Fixie famous shoutouts to Thane Berg, Brandon Black, David K, Gio Dezera, Julian Corona, Ryan Witt, Scott Palangi, and Zane Kolnik for helping to make these fixed gear videos possible through the support on Patreon. And remember that life is short, but don't make it shorter, so be sure to ride your bike every day, whether it's just around town or to another country, to be reasonably dangerous.